Just One Thing is a podcast with both feet firmly placed in the world of events and the creative industries, presented by me, Mel Noakes.
And me, Max Fellows.
It's a podcast from Elevate, where industry trailblazers write a letter to their younger selves.
And consider what wise words of advice they would give themselves now, if only they could.
Our discussion is all based on this letter. Be prepared for refreshingly honest conversations and words of wisdom.
Our guest on this episode is my very good friend Mel Noakes, Head of Sponsorship and Events at Santander and co-founder with me of the event industry's largest mentoring and training provider, Elevate. Mel has worked both agency and client side and has spent the last 20 years creating world-class brand experiences and sponsorship activations globally for Santander, Sony Ericsson, Sony Mobile, Shell, Jack Daniels and Disney, to name just a few. She's also been lucky enough to work on some of the most iconic sponsorship properties, including Ferrari, Formula One, Williams Racing, UEFA Champions League and the World Cup, not forgetting Santander Cycles. She's passionate about our industry and is sought-after speaker and guest lecturer at universities. She's also a successful coach and published author. Mel says, get comfortable with being uncomfortable because that's where the magic happens. I'm fortunate to know Mel very well, so I can tell you firsthand she's unbelievably hardworking, fierce, resilient and determined, and I'm so pleased to be able to call her my very good friend. Mel is now going to read a letter to her younger self.
Dear Mel, age 20, in 2001. Where do I even begin? Sitting in Goa, it's hard to imagine the unexpected twists and turns life has in store for you. Your sense of adventure has led you to India on a gap year with your best friend. As cliche as it sounds, this trip has been about finding yourself. And you have. Travel will continue to be a huge part of your life, but it will evolve. You will get to South America, and it will be worth the wait. And the Balearics will feature heavily, but you'll also be fortunate to travel for work. You'll trade backpacking for different kinds of adventures, and you'll constantly be reminded that the most meaningful travel is about creating memories to last a lifetime. You already know that life isn't all sunshine and rainbows. The loss of your dad at 18 months, the impact of being bullied at school, and the mental health battle you're still finding your way through, all of it will come to shape you. These experiences also sit behind your drive to never say what if, as you inherently understand the value of life. This plays out in your personal life as well as your career. And speaking of careers, you'll find yourself unexpectedly drawn into the world of events. You'll discover a passion for bringing people together and for crafting experiences that are both memorable and meaningful. You'll learn that success in events isn't just about the logistics, it's about understanding the human element, about creating an atmosphere where people feel seen, heard and valued, and creating moments and memories that matter. You'll be lucky enough to work for 3 exceptional businesses, an agency called Iris, Sony Ericsson, and Santander. All 3 have similar qualities. They're entrepreneurial, brave, creative, and crucially, have some of the most talented people within them who become more than colleagues, they become family. So no, you won't be the dog walker the career coach at school told you you'd be. The experiences you're lucky to create will take you from Japan to the USA, from James Bond to Ant and Dec, from trade shows to festivals and so much in between, and you'll love all of it. You'll face challenges that will test you and your resilience, and you'll learn that stepping outside your comfort zone is often the key to unlocking new opportunities and your own personal growth. Whether it's taking on a secondment you aren't sure is right for you, public speaking, starting a business, leading a team, or saying yes to a surprise call from a client that changes the course of your life forever. Embrace these challenges and moments of opportunity. They'll make you stronger and lead you to places you can't imagine sitting on the beach in Goa right now. You'll also learn the invaluable lessons of leadership. You'll discover that leading a team isn't about giving orders, standing on a stage, or being bestowed the title of leader. It's about empowering others to succeed and creating an environment for them to succeed in. You'll learn from some of the best leaders, as well as the people you line manage. They'll teach you as much about life as they do about leadership. These lessons are a gift. Never take it for granted. And there's a few things you should know from your future self. Firstly, practice self-compassion. there will be times you lose sight of this, working too many hours and putting too much pressure on yourself and your body in your quest for perfection. Please remember that done is better than perfect. Be kind to yourself, especially during the difficult times. Forgive your mistakes, celebrate your successes, and remember that you are enough, always. You'll write a book on that one day. 2, never stop learning. The world is constantly evolving, and so should you. Embrace lifelong learning, whether it's through work, books, travel, podcasts, you'll find out what those things are, or simply observing the people around you. 3, build your resilience. You're going to face some incredible challenges, and life will test you in ways you never imagined, but you'll discover an inner strength you never knew you possessed. Sometimes resilience isn't about bouncing back, it's about finding a new normal. 4, give back. Find ways to contribute to something bigger than yourself. Volunteer your time, support causes you believe in, and make a positive impact on the world. Remember, if you're lucky enough to do well, you have a responsibility to send the elevator back down. You'll go on to create a truly remarkable elevator. 5, find your tribe. Learn the true meaning of family, not just the one you're born into, but the one you choose. The friends who become siblings, the colleagues who become family, and the partner who becomes your rock. Cherish these bonds, nurture them, and never underestimate their power. Next, define your own version of success. It's easy to compare yourself to others and feel you've come out short or be swayed by what other people think success is. Be brave enough to define what success looks like for you, even if it seems crazy to others, and stay true to that. And finally, and probably most importantly, embrace the unexpected. Life rarely follows the script we write for it. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Be open to the detours, embrace the unknown, and trust that even the most challenging experiences can lead to incredible growth. And they usually do. Remember, rainbows need sunshine and rain to form, and distance to appreciate them. So Mel, please remember to cherish the present moment. Time flies by faster than you can imagine. Savour the small joys, celebrate the milestones, and never lose sight of what truly matters. So 20-year-old Mel, be brave, be curious, and believe in yourself. You're in for an incredible ride and some truly magical surprises. With love and unwavering belief in you, your future self, Mel, 2025.
Welcome to your own sofa and stage and podcast, Mel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to the Elevate Sofa. And how does it feel sat on the other side of things?
I'm not going to lie, a little bit unusual. I'm slightly nervous about the fact that I have no control over the questions today, but I'm also really excited to be here with you.
Good. That nervousness should be there because you have no idea what I'm going to ask or what's coming. I have an ambition today, which is to help people understand and see the real you. You have and do a lot, both in terms of publicly with the events world, behind the scenes, at home and things like that. And I want people to be able to see the real Mel, because I've had the pleasure of knowing you for the past 15 or so years.
Is it that long?
I think it's pretty much that long, having tried to sell you some form of event or exhibition stand, I think, at the time. And in that process, and I suppose just want to kind of say, I feel very blessed and lucky to have you in my life, both from a commercial perspective as well as Peter Kerwood on the Elevate side as well. But you are, and you mentioned in your letter, the resilience and the determination. You are someone who I feel very fortunate to have in my life. I owe you a lot. You are brilliant and someone I care about greatly. And so I want to say thank you from myself, from the team Elevate as well. And if I get you to cry, it's £5. But in all sincerity, where we've talked about this letter and we've talked about it to a fair extent, I find myself kind of almost enjoying the process more, because you get to kind of know you more and hear about you more and things. And so that being said, to the starting point, I'm now going to go in and then hopefully open you up so everyone else can find out about you. And where I want to start is that 20-year-old kind of fun-loving individual sat on the beach in Goa. You mentioned in your letter about this self-discovery, and there is the joke of the gap year and everyone going on to find themselves and everything else. What was on the mind of Mel at 20? And you mentioned it worked. What did you find out what was that journey all about?
So for me, the journey was an interesting one, actually. So I watched my next door neighbour, Annie, when I was younger, practice putting up tents for Glastonbury and going off on travels. And then her younger sister, Lenny, as I call her, went off and did the same. So I had a real seed of, I want to go and explore the world and I want to see the world. No one in my family had really done that. And I think it was only really in the 80s, probably 90s, where travel opened up and it was more normal, I guess, for people to want to go and do these gap years. And so I had this seed planted. And when it came to my final years in senior school, I went into STA Travel, which is my favourite brand. Oh my God, I love that brand. And if it was still here, that's where I'd work if I wasn't doing what I'm doing. And I just had this real sense of, I want to understand what's out there. I want to see the world. And I'd gone into STA Travel and planned the trip alone. So my best friend, Danielle, she wasn't due to come on the trip. It was something I wanted to do. And I went in, booked it, designed the route, got really excited, paid for it. And I'd got home and phoned Danny and said to her, I'm doing it. I've booked the trip. This is the route. This is what I'm doing. And I think she got really excited. Well, I know she got really excited, phoned her mum and said, I'd really like to go with Mel. Phoned me back and said, Mum said I can come. Can I come with you? And that was how we ended up going together. And I think for me, I was really aware of this big world out there and knowing that I wanted to explore and I wanted to have a sense of what was possible and not be limited by, I live in this postcode and I have this kind of life and I have this kind of path. I wanted to explore. So the chance to explore and meet lots of different people, be out of your comfort zone and find connection really with lots of different people that were also there exploring and seeing the world for the first time, meeting different cultures, eating different food, not having the safety net of the family and the friends and everything you know, and almost being able to be any version of yourself that you wanted to be and starting to figure out, well, who am I when I'm not all of the stories that have been told by my friends and all of the history. I could just be me and being really comfortable with that, actually. And we had so much fun on that trip. It's still more than 20 years ago now that we started it, and we still talk about it. There are still so many great memories. So what was on our minds was just this real sense of adventure and the start of life and real opportunity. And I don't think either of us took it for granted that, I went to work to earn it. There wasn't a trust fund waiting for me to go traveling because it was something I really wanted. So it felt like life was starting and it was so exciting.
What a moment, I suppose, then, and that excitement. And so that was Mel at 20. And I'm mindful that those that don't know Mel now as well as I do, can you also introduce yourself in terms of what you're doing now and a bit about you and something that we wouldn't know about you?
Something you wouldn't know about me. Okay.
Go the corporate side. Yeah, give us the real world answer first, and then
I don't have a taekwondo red belt in the corner.
That's fine.
So I am passionate about our industry, and I've been lucky enough to build amazing experiences for some incredible brands over the last 20 years. As the letter says, I've done everything from festivals to trade shows, worked with some incredible people. And I was lucky enough to have agency experience. I started at Iris and then moved into the brand side with Sony Ericsson. And I'm now lucky enough to be at Santander. I am fortunate also to work with so many exceptionally talented people, both the team I lead, there's 11 of them and they're all incredible, but also I sit alongside the management team, the marketing leadership team, and again, surrounded by such talented people. And then the day-to-day is really varied. No 2 days the same. My remit covers all of our brand experiences. So that's everything from internal town halls, product launches, building openings, activations from our sponsorships that we'll do for our colleagues, to externally, might be exhibitions, trade shows, thought leadership events, intimate events with our brand ambassadors, hosting at events. But then on the sponsorship side, the chance to work with people like Atlassian Williams Racing, Claire Williams, Jenson Button. We work with Formula One as well, and to be part of the Santander Cycles properties as well, as a proud Londoner, the chance to see the cycles going around London every day and being part of Milton Keynes and being so intrinsic to those cities is something I'm really proud of. And we also have a partnership with Twinkle, which is the world's largest online education platform. And we have co-designed a financial education program that's now out there supporting 5 to 16-year-olds. And we've worked with nearly 3 million people have downloaded the resources up until now. So it is absolutely brilliant to be in a role that you are constantly thinking about new things. It's really varied. It's really challenging. The team challenge me always to be better. The kinds of projects you work on are always different. So it's great because we get to be really creative, and I get to be really creative. Outside of Santander, obviously the brilliant Elevate with you and Pete, where I get to channel a lot of my love for psychology, personal development, and all of the coaching that I've done to bring that into Elevate to really help people that come on the program develop their skills as a mentor, ensure that their journey through it is a really successful one, and for our mentees that they get the most out of the program. So when I'm not doing Elevate or Santander work, outside of work, I am a wife, a mum. I absolutely love our industry. So I'm a travelaholic with a slightly less well-traveled version of that now that I'm a mum. But I love going to experiences still. So all of the brilliant things that come into London that we're so lucky to have in this city. And I'm really enjoying taking Albie around to some of those things and showing him those. Something that people won't know about me. I'm trying to think about what I want out there in the ether. But the one that you'll know, and that probably a lot of people won't know, is that I used to be a dancer as well.
Where?
This is where it's dangerous when you know me so well. So I used to dance to Miss Moneypenny. So I was able to go and work in Ibiza. I've worked all over the UK. I got the chance to go to work in Russia. Got to dance in Moscow. That was amazing. Wow. And lots of other places as well. So yes. I
wanted you to clarify, because for 1 second, I didn't want anyone thinking it was anything kind of untoward or otherwise.
I had to do that quite a lot through my life, particularly for the older people in my family, where you tell them you're a dancer and you work in nightclubs and the instant reaction is, oh. And I have to always qualify what it was.
No,
so yes.
I have, yeah.
Thank you, putting it out there.
Dignity's there, absolutely. So what I find amazing, and I don't think you kind of almost give yourself credit for as well, because you also have a book out there. You're a published author, as we said, and that's very much around the self-care.
Yes.
And so just leaning into that side to kind of start with, really, you come across as exceptionally confident and well-rounded. Passion is obviously kind of oozes out of you as well. But the desire and love for self-care, you mentioned in your letter about going through kind of challenges earlier on and wanting to give people a bit of an understanding about that. Bereavement, bullying, and also some other kind of elements we'll talk about later. Where or how has that manifested from there? And I think it's amazing you've turned it, but at what point have you turned what arguably would be some kind of quite challenging and quite, difficult times into a real positive and helping others?
So the book is something I'm incredibly proud of, actually. The thought of that being out there and having helped and supported so many people, thousands of people, actually tens of thousands of people have bought that book, which blows my mind a little bit. And I could never have worked with that many people. But how did it turn around? It's not an easy answer to that question, because it has been such a journey through. And really, it came about later in life. I had done a lot of work and a lot of therapy, and I'm sure we'll get onto that in a little bit. But I had gone through a lot of coaching and training and realised that actually what I really wanted to do was help people lean into the power of self-care. And self-care is often seen to be quite woolly and quite fluffy and not very material, for want of a better word. But what I learned through my recovery from eating disorders was that self-care was actually a really important practice, and it's a daily commitment to look after yourself, to put yourself, if not first, at least up there alongside the other things that you were deeming to be important, and making a commitment to do the things that cared for yourself so that you could really thrive. And I realised how few people really lent into that and understood what was important. And when Penguin approached me to write the book, it was such an opportunity to get that message out there. And it's something I've continued to have to practice. And you know very well, in recent years, I've lost a lot of members of my family, my mum, my dad, my father-in-law. I've seen friends sadly bury children. and you realise that life is really difficult and that there are difficult times that come, and that practice of self-care is so important because those are the fundamental foundations that will get you through those hard times. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey, and it's definitely been something that I continually have to practice and remind myself of, because it's so important.
And so more than anyone, in terms of that self-reflection, that, you know, that self-worth and work and the type of things that we're talking about, you must do, or how did you find the writing the letter to yourself? Because it's a little bit more of a format. And for those listening for the first time, the letter is a letter that Mel's written to her younger self at 18 to 20 or so, and the advice. So what was that process like for you then, given what we've just been talking about?
I really loved it. So I've done exercises like this through my coaching.
Knew you'd be a bloody professional at this.
But it was interesting because I've done it from a very personal standpoint previously, which has been all of the things that our guests have said, very cathartic, very therapeutic. So I was expecting that to be the case. I'd never written a letter with the career focus before, so it was quite an interesting one. And I challenged myself to do it from that point of view, although obviously there's a lot of personal in there too. But the few things that really came up for me were a real sense of gratitude on so many levels, gratitude for all of the people that I've met along the way that have been part of the journey, part of my story, gratitude for the ability to build a career in something that I absolutely love and a life that I absolutely love. I feel so blessed to have a career, a family, the space to create something like Elevate and genuinely gives back on such a scale that I don't think I could have imagined it when we started that conversation 10 years ago. Also a real sense of pride in all of those things, because the chance to build so many experiences and deliver so much work that means something to people and create moments that are really important and really matter. And then through Elevate, being able to provide a platform for thousands of people now, we can say, to improve their situation, improve their careers. And a real sense of fun. So I really enjoyed looking back, because over 20 years, I've delivered so many different kinds of events. I've been involved in so many different kinds of projects. I've met so many different people. And I could take on an entire podcast just naming the people. It really made me smile thinking about all the people in the background. So it was great to almost reminisce and go down memory lane again, because it's not something, we're very forward focused in the events industry. So it was quite nice to take a moment and reflect backwards.
Do you think Mel at 20 would have potentially envisaged, or could you have envisaged where you're at now?
Absolutely not. I knew I'd be okay. I don't think
what do you mean by okay, though? So
I think when I left school, I had always been a really good student. I had really good grades. I was very comfortable with, I'm clever. I can do certain things. I know that I can communicate well. I know that I am smart. I know that I could turn my hand at a job and I would be okay. So I left school with this sense of, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's going to be okay. And it's actually quite sad now. I go into a lot of schools and lecture, or I go back to my old high school sometimes and speak. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty for the youth today coming out of schools. I don't think they have that same sense of everything's going to be okay. But when I left school in the 90s and when I left university in the early 2000s, I just had this sense of belief it's going to be okay. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's going to be okay and I'll figure it out. And I think I always had that sense of, you've got this, in the back of my mind.
Where did that come from?
I don't know.
That kind of confidence and things. Because you were saying about generational, you know, and I wonder, was it generally just more people had that belief, or whether it was
so.
you?
I think the times were just a bit different then. And I think there was this sense of possibility. Most people from school went to university, not because everybody was absolutely passionate about learning, and it was just what everybody did. And then everybody went and got a job and everyone did quite well. And I look across my peers from school and everybody has done so well. And it's so lovely to see so many of my friends be so successful and doing lots of different types of jobs. And without fail, I don't think there's one person that I look at and go, oh yeah, I could have seen you doing that, because we've all ended up in such amazing places and remarkable places. And when we were at school doing our careers fair, I mentioned it in the letter, the guys that came in to deliver that programme it was very traditional. You could be a lawyer, you could be a doctor. In my case, I got told I'd be a dog walker.
Not far off there. Hang on.
Set the ambitions high. I do have
love
dogs.
for dogs. Yeah,
I do love dogs, and I do have dogs, but it was very traditional. So in a sense, a lot of the jobs that we've ended up in my case, events and sponsorship, that those weren't jobs that were talked about at school. So I don't think we really knew what was out there. And what a surprise it was. What a great opportunity to go into something and build a career in things that we love. So I feel really lucky.
I agree massively. And I also don't think much has changed. And maybe that's a bit broad brush and pessimistic, but in terms of the awareness of what's out there, the potential job roles and things like that, I personally would love to see, and I'm sure AI could do this, is that a personality type test and then scan every job on the planet to then say these are the vocations that actually you would really succeed at. Note to self, tool to build. But what for you then in terms of those earlier years, and dog walking would be the fallback, perhaps the plan B. What did you aspire to be? What was the things that really kind of you were passionate about at 20 that you wanted to do, and did you have an idea of the kind of career that you thought you might have?
So I loved psychology and I loved English, and I actually also loved geography. Those were my three big passions. And when I went to university, I studied English literature, but I never lost my passion for psychology and geography. But in all honesty, I don't think I really knew what I wanted to be. And I came to be in the events industry, not quite by accident, but it came from, I was at university, and in the second year of university, it became really evident that the financial burden was too big for my family, too big for me to really stay. And so I made the decision to defer a year. I'd had a conversation with my tutors at the time, trying to explore different avenues to stay, but the maths didn't work out. And so I deferred a year, saying, I'm going to go to London, I'm going to get a job, I will pay off some debt, and I will save so that I can come back.
How did that feel?
It felt really difficult. I felt like I'd really failed, because I'd always done really well at school, and university was almost a given. And for me to not complete it, I'm somebody, when I start something, I finish something. And it took a lot to make the decision, but in many ways the decision was very easy, because I didn't want the burden on my family. It was really difficult for them. And so I went to London to get a job, and just thinking, right, I'm going to do this for a year. I will save. I'll have the money. I mean, I think I was a bit naive to think that I could go and work for a year
money
and
in London.
save money in London for one, and then save enough to see me through a university degree. But that was what I thought. And so I came back to London, signed up for some recruitment agencies, and went out and interviewed. And it just so happens that I got the opportunity to go and interview for Iris. I'm sure we'll talk about that. That was the most entertaining interview I ever had. And got the job and ended up as a receptionist at Iris. And from there, the career developed, and I made the decision not to go back to uni. And one day I'd love to. It's on my sort of bucket list of finishing the degree. But the career unfolded for me. So to some degree, I think I was so young, I hadn't even started to really think about it. Found myself in a space that I loved, in a role that I loved, with a great opportunity ahead of me. And I followed that path. So to some degree, I think I hadn't even had the chance to figure it out yet.
So you'd say then, to some extent, by accident?
Yeah, absolutely. I turned up for a receptionist job.
Tell us about then how you fell into the industry, as many people kind of fell into, or...
So I turned up for the interview at Iris, and I remember going to St. James, where they were at the time, and they were in a really small office, either in the basement or the first floor, I can't quite remember. And it was a very nondescript door. I remember standing outside, and it was almost a shared workspace environment before shared workspaces were a thing. And I remember standing outside and just wondering what on earth I was doing there. So I was a child of the 80s. I was expecting big glass buildings, briefcases, shoulder pads, the works. And I was in this building where there was so many sort of shared workspaces, I guess. I didn't really understand what it was. And I remember pushing the door open, going in for the interview. And I think everyone that was there at the time will agree with me. I opened the door and it was chaos behind the door. but an organised chaos. And
agency type chaos.
Agency chaos. There was a pool table behind the door. There were desks almost shoved into this space because they had already outgrown it. They were shouting across the room, throwing things across the room. And Ian Milner, one of the co-founders of Iris, actually interviewed me. And I remember sitting down with him, going through the interview for a receptionist role. So you had the co-founder interviewing for the receptionist. And I left not really sure what they did, but there was something about that space and the electricity in the room that when I left, I just thought, gosh, I really want to work here. I really hope that I get this job. And by the time I'd gotten the train, got to Tottenham Court Road, I was in Waterstones and got the call that I'd got the job. And I was absolutely elated. And I feel really fortunate because it was, like you say, a mistake. It was luck. It was whatever you want to call it, but it certainly wasn't by design that I got to start my career in one of the best agencies in London of the time. And I grew with them. And then a year after I got the receptionist role, the Iris Experience team was created, and Henry Scotland and Dan Housen quite literally bounced into the office. And I remember watching them and thinking, that team looks like they have fun. I think I really would like to have a chance at that. And whether I wore Ian down or he believed in me, I'm not quite sure, probably a mix of both. I just kept on at him saying, I really want that opportunity. I'd really want to go and work there. And eventually he said yes. And so I moved over to Iris Experience as a production assistant. And we've had the lovely Dan Housen on the sofa already and got to work with Dan, who really taught me my craft. But I was very lucky to learn it from a production side, to really understand the nuts and bolts of how does an event happen and who are the suppliers that make things happen and the rigging and the lighting and the AV. And it was such a dream role. I was so excited to get that role. And from there, the story unfolded.
So how did that journey kind of go? And we talk a lot about people kind of learning, going through the ranks, probably maybe more so was the traditional path back there versus now the ambition kind of jumping and going. For you, and this being completely new and foreign as a sector and industry, how did you go about upskilling to a degree? And if anyone is listening, then what would that kind of advice in an earlier years role be? So
most of my training was on the job. And I think one of the beauties of being in an agency is you get the chance to do so many different kinds of roles. We were a very small team. And so I got involved in everything from artist liaison to on-site management to supplier calls to client management. And I remember the point at which I had to make a decision, because I'd got to a stage where I had to make a call whether I would stay more on the production side or go into the account handling side or the client management side. And I remember having conversations with people around the time. And sadly, at that point, there were no female producers. I didn't see anyone in a role that I looked to and thought, oh, okay, I could do that or I could be that. And it's so true. You can't be what you can't see. And I knew I was really good with clients. I really enjoyed working with clients, but I loved being part of the real hardcore events team and being on site. And not always. There were definitely some times where when you're about to open the V Festival and you've got a Budweiser truck stuck in the middle of the fields and you're the ones responsible for getting out, it's slightly less fun, slightly stressful. But I made the decision to move more into the account handling side. And from there, again, I was very lucky to have a brilliant line manager in Rania Robinson, who was so generous with her time and experience and really trained me in the art of client management and what was expected and how to do things. And it was only later, I can't remember whether I was still at Iris or if I'd already moved to Sony Ericsson, but I took a CIM diploma just to learn about marketing. I wanted it for myself.
I was going to say, did you make the choice to do that?
Yeah, I wanted it for myself. I wanted to understand the world in which I operated in, because whilst events, they are also part of a marketing discipline and they are part of a tool set and different verticals from which you could give messages. And I wanted to really understand, well, how does this fit into the marketing context and how do I use it to its best effect? And I wanted to feel like I was confident enough to have that education and have the right knowledge, the right terminology, the right foundation really to be able to grow from. So I went off and did that, and it was quite entertaining. It had been quite a few years since I'd been at university, and just the skill of writing essays again and learning again and how you apply yourself. it was a really good reminder of the academic side of me and what was required.
Was it easy?
Once I remembered how to write essays, it was.
So I remembered how to adult learn.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's a skill and you forget because you go into the working world and things like indexing and referencing and the structure of how you present an argument, and you've got a word count and you've got to get it right. And we have a version of that now in the way that we write PowerPoints. It's a different skill again, but it was quite lovely to almost be reminded of those years and remind yourself of, this is how you do this and this is how you do it well. And I really enjoyed it. And whilst I can't say if it really changed the actual day-to-day work, it definitely gave me confidence. And I was really grateful for that.
Well, you mentioned in the letter about always learning, and I'm a firm believer and back you on that fully. What would be like the last thing, or the most, two parts to this, what has been the most worthwhile adult learning thing that you have done? And equally, what was the last thing you learned new?
One of the best things I ever did was when I became a formal line manager. I had some coaching and mentoring to support me with that transition, to really understand my role and what was required. And I think
that'd be from what, like a mid-level to senior level type management?
So the first time I ever managed a team, so I moved into Sony Ericsson and I'd never been directly responsible for, I'd never had line management responsibility. And when I finally got it, I really wanted to do a good job. I really believed in people and I really believed in developing people, but I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know what I was meant to do. How do you develop somebody? What is my role? Should I be hands-on into the detail, micromanaging? Should I give space? And most people get promoted and end up line managing because they're good at their job, not because they're a good manager.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a good manager, and I needed to learn how to get out of the way and let people do the job. And especially at Sony Ericsson, because so many of the projects my team came in and worked on were projects I had personally crafted, created, developed, grown. So I was intrinsically linked to them, and I had to learn to let go. And it's very easy to let go when you trust somebody and you know somebody and you know how things are going. But it took me a long while to figure out that journey. And the most recent thing I learned, oh my gosh, I learn every day. Some of them are really big things. Some of them are really small things. And I think that's the joy of being part of a leadership team and being part of a business like Santander that is constantly growing and changing. I can't think of something off the top of my head, but honestly, I learn every day.
You talk such passion about the team and the business and things like that. And what's lovely and interesting at the same time, I know why we set up Elevate, but equally you're talking about a time before we'd met and before it was an idea, around the role of which people were playing, around the role of which actually seeing it to be able to believe it, the lack of kind of visible role models and things like that. And in effect, that's exactly why we did Elevate. So tell me through then, you mentioned Sony Ericsson there. A lot of people, I'm sure, would like to know, how does one move to the dark side? And by the dark side, I mean brand side from agency side. How does that come about? And in doing so, is there a brighter or a darker side of the two, agency side or brand side?
Good question. So my journey into client side was probably not unusual, actually. I'm learning now as I've developed through my career. So I was still at Iris and had the opportunity to be seconded, and by that I mean I more or less went and worked for Sony Ericsson. So Sony Ericsson were running Mobile World Congress at the time and needed somebody to come in and lead the project. And so Henry Scotland came and talked to me and said, we're going to send you, it's a great opportunity. And at that time I was still very young and I was absolutely petrified. I really didn't feel ready. I wasn't sure if I had the skills, and I felt really nervous about being put into a global team. I don't know why I felt that, but I think we'd worked with the UK team, we worked with the European team. The global team felt like the really serious clients, and I felt quite exposed actually and quite vulnerable. So I was a bit of a pest about it, and I've subsequently said sorry to Hennes for that because I really didn't want to go. But I did. And what I found was an incredible team of people, a really passionate business, a really entrepreneurial spirit, and I absolutely loved working with them. So that first year, we delivered Mobile World Congress for the first time, and it was 150 square meters, and we shared meeting rooms with Ericsson. And I had the privilege of being part of the team and treated like part of the team. So I really felt like I was one of the Sony Ericsson people. But I also got the chance to speak to the CEO, the heads of the regions, and I grew a really good network there. And then the following year, they had Mobile World Congress come back, and they asked me to come back again, which I did. And I loved it again. And I got to meet and work with some incredible people. But around that time, I decided that I wanted to leave Iris, and it felt like the right time to go off somewhere new. And when I told Sony Ericsson this, the person that I worked most closely with, Steve Walker, who has gone on to be such a big part of my professional and personal life, actually. He's been a real mentor to me. Steve found out. So Steve had called me from Disneyland. It was a Sunday afternoon. And he called and said, we know you want to go and work for this other agency, but we've got a better idea. We think you should come and work for us. And
sounds almost like Mafia-esque. We think you should do this now.
But it was such a surprise to me, and it was so unexpected. And because I had already planned in my head, I'm going to go to this agency, this is the route, that it had caught me off guard. And Steve, being as gracious as he was, said, I'm going to phone you every day. We'll have a conversation about it and I'll help you decide. And to his credit, he phoned me every day. I had opportunities to speak to people that had also made the transition from agency to client side, which was less common then, but is much more common now. And at the end of the week, when I was still finding it difficult to decide, Steve said to me, look, if you can't decide, toss a coin. And if the coin lands on something and you're disappointed, that will tell you everything you need to know. And I tossed the coin, it landed on the agency. I felt disappointed, and that was my answer. And so I became a client because I had done great work, built great relationships, and they took a chance and they built a role for me. And I am forever grateful that they did, because the Sony Ericsson years was so much fun. I learnt so much. I worked with Steve and with so many other brilliant people who really did teach me so much and mold me into the type of professional I am today. And it all came down to a crazy phone call from America.
And a coin toss.
And a coin toss, yeah.
You mentioned that you didn't kind of believe it was coming or otherwise. At that point, self-doubt and your belief in your own ability?
Not that, but how many brands go out and build a role for somebody and go, we want you, we'll make that happen? It just wasn't something that I ever expected. I knew I was good at my job and I really loved what I did. I knew I really loved their business and I loved the team there, and I felt just as much part of Sony Ericsson as I did at Iris. But I also knew I'd hit a ceiling at Iris and I couldn't go any further, and I felt the only way to do that was to move. And at that time, I felt my pathway was agency. I loved the environment, I loved the culture, I loved the energy and the creativity, and so I was naturally drawn to, this is my path. But looking back now, I realise Sony Ericsson was just as much of an agency-style culture, but in a different guise, as Iris was. And I still had very creative environments, not so creative offices, but creative people, entrepreneurial people, opportunities to try new things. I got the chance to run the Bond Marcoms campaign globally. Who does that? I mean, it was incredible. But they said, do you want to do it? I said yes. And I got the chance to do that. So it had many of the hallmarks of an agency. And actually, even now, I create my team at Santander very much like an agency. And I'm constantly talking to them about bringing creativity and going out and seeing things, trying different ways to deliver projects, being brave, trying things, failing, learning from them. So I've always taken that agency spirit with me wherever I've gone. So you asked me whether I choose agency or brand. Yeah. I would always choose brand now, because I love the depth that you get in the brand and the opportunity to really move things forward, because ultimately you're the brief givers, you're the people with the budgets. And I think having worked agency side, knowing how to get the best out of agencies and work with them to really do work that you're proud of is something I love. But the breadth of work and creativity in agencies, it was such a privilege to learn my craft there.
And what would you say to Mel there in the early stages of Sony Ericsson? I know we're not asking for a second piece of advice, but just as you're starting into the world of the brand side, the client side, if you like, what would be
slow down and enjoy it more, I think.
Okay.
Because everything was so fun and you felt like you wanted to do it all. Well, I felt like I wanted to do it all and I never wanted to miss anything and I wanted to be involved in everything. And I think in doing
that's just Mel in general though, right?
It is Mel in general. But the chance to really slow down and enjoy it, because they were some of the best years. And, you know, growing Mobile World Congress, which on paper, running a trade show for 10 years sounds pretty uninspiring, or at least it sounded uninspiring to me. But the things that I got to do as part of Mobile World Congress and growing that to 4,000 square meters 10 years later, an independent stand, an independent meeting room area, getting to work with Rita Ora and Paloma Faith and other people that we'd bring in from the Sony Music side, having the chance to really galvanize a workforce behind that project and get people excited. I mean, it was such a thrill. So I'd say slow down and enjoy it more.
And to those that don't know, is where we met, wasn't it? It was very much at Mobile World Congress, which I think then we both did another 10, 15 years of almost. And I don't think we ever did work together properly, but it was one of those that saw each other quite interesting, wasn't it, through the years? Kind of different roles and different levels of, and your stands were getting bigger and the budgets were getting bigger and the more complex and everything else. So it's lovely to kind of witness and watch that, as well as quite a good fun evenings of Rita Ora and parties. The Sony parties, by the way, are quite iconic.
They were good.
Well talked about, definitely.
Not quite the Google stunts, but they came a good close second.
Yeah, they're pretty good. So the client side journey then, and to where you are now, what does that look like, and what have been the kind of the challenges and the kind of the learnings on the way over the last 5-10 years of doing that?
So many learnings. I think the biggest one for me was you can't do it all yourself, and really learning to be a good line manager and supporting the people around me. Because at first at Sony Ericsson, I had a brilliant title, which was Global Head of Experiential. But at the time,
pretty good, isn't it?
It's a great title. Yeah. It was a team of one.
Intergalactic Head of Experiential. With
head of everything.
Head of you, yeah.
So I was a team of one. So I learned to do everything myself. So starting to really build a team and learn how to let go. I talked about that earlier. That was a really big thing for me, not because I thought I could do it better, but because when you are in events and the roles we have, you're responsible for everything going well and you want everything to be perfect. And you almost have to unlearn some behaviors to go, no, I need to help you do that now and pass that on, and learning to sort of be a ringleader and not necessarily involved in everything. So that was a big learning.
Really self-aware. Have you always had that, or is that something that, again, you developed in
I think
time?
I've always had that, and I've been lucky because I had brilliant leaders to learn from. Steve was an incredible leader, and there were others. Helen Barnakoff is another one who went on to become the CEO of Microsoft in Sweden.
Wow.
So I was very lucky to have incredible role models to look up to, and I used to say to myself, when I'm lucky enough to be in that position, I'd like to take some of Steve and some of Helen, and anybody that knows me will know that I quote Steve almost daily. So that was really lucky. But then the other things for me have always been around being in spaces and places where I can constantly learn, being surrounded by people that challenge me to think bigger, differently, to move on. And when I left Sony Ericsson, I started my own business as a coach and a consultant. And I remember going into businesses and being really excited about being there, but wanting to see the outcome and realizing, I'm not done yet, because I don't just want to pop in and pop out. I want to come in and be really involved, and I want to grow a team again. But I took a real conscious decision at that point of the type of business I wanted to be involved in. I wanted to be in a market. I wanted to change industry. I wanted to do something different because I wanted to take my skills somewhere else and learn something new. So for me, the big things have always been learning and growing.
And you talk about starting your own business at that point, which is quite brave. You then have gone on to push yourself out of your comfort zone, you know, being resilient with public speaking and things like that, and being quite brave, if you like. Can't get you off the mic now. On that journey, and using that term kind of resilience, there's some things that have been going on or have happened that people don't necessarily know about, which I would like, and if you're okay to share, ask about, because I think it highlights that aspect where you never really know what's going on, and equally everyone has stuff going on. What you see perhaps is the swan-like kind of demeanour of floating through the corporate world of events, smashing it and everything else. But for you, what were the bigger challenges? And I know that you mentioned around eating disorder being a big one as well. But if you're happy to share, we'd love to hear that. And more so for anyone listening that might be going through something similar, maybe not the same thing as well. How did that journey unfold and what was the turning point?
So my eating disorders it was a really difficult time of my life. So I had both anorexia and bulimia. I was around 12 when that started, and I was in my late 20s when I started my recovery journey. So it was in the background of the Iris, Sony Ericsson years, less so, well, hasn't been a feature in the Santander years because fortunately I was able to go through a recovery process. But what I would say to anyone going through that is start talking, and don't be afraid if the people that you're talking to first don't really know how to help or what to do. It's just important to talk. Your friends will probably find it quite hard to hear about it, but will love you and care about you and want to help. And if you don't find the right therapist or type of talking therapy, just keep going. You will find the right one, but start talking. And for me, the turning point was actually in South America. So I had taken another gap year to travel around South America and Central America. So the way that I define it is my first trip was finding myself, and the second trip was very much growing into myself. And I'd completed the 4-day Machu Picchu hike. And at the end of that, I had such a profound sense of gratitude to my body for having allowed me to do something as remarkable as that walk. It was really spiritual for me, and it was a real emotional journey. And anyone that's been lucky enough to do it will know you start in the Andean mountains and end up in a rainforest. And it was something about it just shifted something in me. And I remember standing at the top looking over Machu Picchu and just thinking, I'm going to get better from this, and I'm going to be okay. And through that journey, I went through coaching and various well-being groups and therapy groups. And that was where my desire to help other people came from. And it's something that I now know how to manage and live with. I've been fortunate to be 15 years well, or in remission, as I would call it. But it gave me a sense of resilience and an understanding of, I'm really lucky to be here, because specifically with eating disorders, the longer you have them, the higher the chances that you don't make it through. So I defied the odds, and I feel really lucky for that, because also losing my dad at such a young age, and I've had a lot of bereavement in my life, particularly recently, but losing my dad when I was 18 months, I hadn't realised how big a deal that was, which sounds kind of crazy, but when you're young, your reality is your reality. You don't know what other people's normal looks like. And it was only when Albie reached the age I was that I really realised how much I would have known about my dad passing away. This big figure was suddenly not there anymore. And learning that sort of resilience to get through those challenging times. Losing my dad didn't really show up for me when I was younger, but it definitely showed up for me in my later years, because I wondered who he was and who I was as a result of that. And I could never find those questions out. There weren't answers to those questions. And whilst I had people around me that knew him and could give me some sense of him, I would never know him. And I found peace with that after a while. I think I got to the point where I just accepted it's okay not to know, and I'm me, and that's enough. And those lessons have been lessons that keep coming around as I've gotten older. And I think as you strengthen your resilience and you go through those challenging times in life, my auntie said it and I reference it in the letter, rainbows are made from sunshine and rain, and then you need distance to appreciate them. And I think you only realise how resilient you are when you come out of those periods and you realise, I survived and I'm okay. And actually, if I can get through that, the next thing that comes across, I can probably get through that too. And I've also experienced just recently, lots of members of my family I mentioned earlier have passed away, and having to really pull on that. It was through COVID, lots of changes going on. My team were going through a lot of things, because that's the thing, as you get older, especially when you line manage as well and you're head of a team, your team are also going through things as you're going through things. So yeah, I've pulled on resilience a lot through my career.
And during that, and the fact that you've had all that going on, what has been the motivating factor for you? What is the thing that drives you and keeps the fire burning?
So there's a few things. Now very much it's Albie, my son. Everything is for him.
And the husband.
and yes. And secondly is my husband, JP. So my family absolutely are a big driver. But then I'm really passionate about what we do and what we create. And if I think about Elevate and the journey of Elevate, knowing that the work that you do has such an impact, and seeing particularly the stories that come through, that we're lucky enough to be able to share some of them, but just the emails or the notes or the WhatsApps that come through so many times. Whenever I'm tired or we're tired, and whenever I'm thinking, I just don't have the energy for that right now, something will come through and you are reminded the importance of these things. So that always gets me through. So yeah, family and the passion.
And you mentioned in the letter, but equally I know, and you mentioned about Twinkle as well, the whole premise of giving back. And we recently had a guest on the podcast about legacy, and she articulated it exceptionally well about legacy. You talking about Albie, actually, it resonates quite heavily. So in terms of that kind of giving back side of things, who is it that gave back to you? You talk about the elevator, sending the elevator back down.
Yeah.
Who is it that did it for you? And then what is it that your ultimate aim or hope to achieve is giving back?
So who sent the elevator down for me? So many people through the career. I've mentioned already Rania, Steve, absolutely. And now at Santander, my boss Dan is phenomenal. He's such a great mentor.
Name?
Dan Sherwood.
Dan Sherwood.
So he sat in my role previously, is now the CMO. And it's great to have somebody that really understands what you do, that can really champion you and support you. But also in my personal life, there's been so many people that have inspired me and supported me and championed me. When I ran my own business, I met a network of women who were such supporters. So I think it's true that there are different people that come in at different places of your life and different people you need. Some people might be constant through it. Steve, whether he likes it or not, is a constant. But there will be other people that come in and out and play a role at different times. So I've been lucky for so many people to be that role for me. And where do I want it to be for Elevate?
Well, two parts to it. What do you hope personally for Mel? Not Elevate. I'll ask Elevate afterwards, but for Mel,
the legacy that I
because of the self-care book, you have no idea who's read that, and it might help or impact. Just wanted to understand for you what
I think. I feel really lucky. I'm in my 40s. I've written a book that is helping lots of people. I've created events that mean a lot to people. I've been lucky enough to lead teams, and I hope I've left every person that I've worked with in a better place. And I'm still in touch with all the people that have been in my teams in different ways. So I'd like to think that I've left behind an opportunity for people to look up and think, I can do that too, because my background wasn't one of particular wealth or opportunity. It was one full of love. And I was very lucky to have an incredible family. But I'm just a normal London girl who fell into a career, loved it and did well. And I remember Steve saying to me at one point, because it was at a time where there was nobody on the stage that was female talking about our industry and things like that, and he challenged me to go out there and be the person. He was like, well, why are you waiting for someone else to do it? Why don't you go and do it? So I'd love to think that I've left behind opportunities for people to improve their lives in some way and learn things that I've learnt hard slightly easier.
I mean, the crux of Elevate, right, is helping other people avoid some of those challenges and pitfalls. And what do you hope with Elevate? We obviously talk about this and have done a bit more recently as we've come to our 10th year, which is a bit mind-blowing. What is your personal ambition?
So firstly, I can't believe Elevate where it is 10 years on after that conversation we had in London Bridge and the crazy idea of creating a mentoring program. 2 bottles of wine and bravado, and we're like, we can totally do this. And 10 years on, so this has already surpassed my wildest dreams, but also was the thing that we dreamed about, was creating a community and creating a platform for event professionals to connect, to develop, but also to really champion what our industry does, because our industry is amazing. In terms of what's next, I think there's 2 things for me. I think there's one, the opportunity to really change the shape of the industry and the face of the industry through New Gen and the diversity projects that we've got running, and the opportunity to give other people the chance to find their way into this industry, especially those that the traditional paths either aren't available to or they have stepped out of. So I think that's one. And the other one is that we continue to develop and support and become the place where you go to for your career development, and knowing that we've already helped almost 2,000 people, just over 2,000 people. There are so many more people to come, that we're really the place where people go, and we're known for that and able to really represent our industry, because I think it's a real privilege to sit in the seat we do.
Yeah, I agree. And how does it feel given the fact that it's now bigger than the sum of us?
I think that's incredible. I think when we designed Elevate and said by the industry for the industry, we didn't really know what it meant.
Just sounded pretty good, right?
Well, I think that ethos and that spirit at the heart of it was always, it was more than me and you.
Yeah.
And it's them more than me, you and Pete. And to see it now with the sponsors coming on board, with advisory board in place, with the mentors and mentees that have trusted us with their journeys and come on board and have co-created it with us, I think it is remarkable.
I completely agree. And I was just pausing there for a second because it's where you think about the people in there who have gone on to then help others, but then independently set up things and or have created secondary support networks as a result of it, I think is probably one of the greatest markers of success to some degree, that you've either inspired others to go on to do the same thing and help others, or you see people's journeys from a certain point all the way through, which is, I suppose, why, and I'm not blowing smoke up your bum, but from a leadership perspective, you've always been I've always been able to sort advice from you and things like that. How would your team now, the Lucky Buggers, how would they describe you in terms of your leadership style in 3 words?
Oh my God. My leadership style: supportive. I'm saying this all with, I'd hope they'd say this. I'll ask them afterwards and I'll let you know.
I'll tell you, I asked them last week and we've got the true. Yeah.
I'd like to think they'd say I was supportive, I was caring, and I created an environment for them to be successful in, which is not a word, but that I create an environment for them to thrive in.
And what's something that they've taught you?
Oh my gosh, they've taught me so many things. I love it when they tell me that I'm wrong or that I'm thinking certain things and they'll come in with a different perspective. And I love that because that's the brilliance of having a diverse team and people from lots of different places. But they've taught me to be patient. They've taught me to be vulnerable and real. And when my parents were dying and I went into work, actually, because I found work a really helpful distraction through it. And they gave me the space to be vulnerable and real. And I remember showing up and thinking, I really want them to see that I'm falling apart, but it's okay. And I'm coming into work because it's good for me, not because I feel I have to, but because they lift me up and being here is therapeutic for me. And they gave me permission to do that. And I'm really grateful. And they also, they hold each other up. They're amazing. I'm going to cry about my team. This is it. You've got your £5.
That's a tenner.
But I love the fact that we've created a little family and all of us at some point in that team have had a situation or something going on personally, and every single one of them steps up and steps forward for them. And they continue to teach me that those family bonds are so important.
I just think anyone listening to that from that team, they're going to be probably in floods of tears as well. So just before we wrap up the conversation, what does success in the future look like for Mel in another kind of 10 years or so? What does that look like for you?
I wondered if you were going to ask me a question like this, actually, and I wondered how I would answer it, because I already feel successful, and not from the things that people would think. I feel successful because I have the most incredible family who I adore and who I can be there for and be present, very present in life. So I can do school drop-offs and pick-ups. So that's the beauty of flexible working. I'm there at sports days. JP and I have time together, but I also have a career that I absolutely love and I'm really enjoying. And I think there's something to be said for, and the lesson that I learned at Sony is almost slowing down and going, I'm going to enjoy this. I've worked really hard to be working on properties and with people that I could have only ever imagined, being part of a leadership team that challenges me to be better, or leading a team of people that I absolutely adore. So I feel really successful already and I'm really enjoying it. Am I still ambitious? Absolutely. But I'm actually in a space right now where I'm just enjoying now, and I don't know what comes next, and I know there is a next. But where I am right now feels really good and I'm just enjoying that.
Love that. Just because I fancy it, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions.
Okay.
I'm going to give you this or that. You've got to answer
this or that, okay.
Well, I'm going to give you 2. You pick one. Go fast. Don't overthink it. And then we'll get to the last question, okay?
Okay.
So are you a winter or a sun person?
Summer, all day long.
Are you a manager or a leader?
Leader.
Are you a Formula One or cycles? Santander cycles?
Both.
No, one or the other. Which project has meant more? Or you're enjoying more at the moment?
Ooh, I'm really enjoying Formula One actually at the moment, just because there's new partners and new opportunities, so it always brings new creativity.
Yeah, okay. And are you on the stage or behind the stage?
Ooh, I'm definitely happiest behind the stage and love behind the stage, but I think there's real value for being on stage, and I enjoy that too.
Okay, Pete or Max?
Both.
Ah, almost had you. I love Pete and you both as well, so it's fine. So with that, it leads us to the finale, if you like, the big one. The one piece of advice that you would give yourself at the age of 20.
I was 20.
You were 20. And in doing so at the same time, I have this beauty of a picture where you look almost mermaid-esque. Where were you during this?
So that is in Mumbai in India, and that was on the set of a Bollywood movie that Danny and I went and starred in as backdrop popcorn style audience in the back of a Bollywood movie.
And that came about how?
So in the backpackers that we were staying in, people would go through and ask the backpackers if they would like to come and be part of the Bollywood movies. We said yes. I think we got paid something like, I think it worked out to be 100 rupees. It was about £4 or something stupid,
right.
But we just wanted to do it for the experience. So that is us on set in a Bollywood movie.
Love that, of course. So to Bollywood Mel, what would be that one piece of advice?
The advice I would give her is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where the magic happens. And for me, that's all about leaning into those opportunities where you're going to stretch yourself out your comfort zone, being brave enough to say yes, being brave enough to trust yourself to go there, and understanding that you'll learn from it and grow from it. Not every decision will be right, but you will learn and grow much more than if you play it safe.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you for being you, for being on my sofa today, and for just being honest and letting people in.
Thank you so much.
I like you a lot. I think they'll like you a lot too.
Thank you.
Elevate operates thanks to the generosity of our partners and supporters. See the show notes to find out more about them.
Together, we're changing lives, careers in the events industry for the better. Our producer is Peter Kerwood, and our sound and mix engineer is Matteo Magariello.